Hello everybody, just going to do a quick little live stream today. Just 2 seconds. Just making sure I can see the chat box. Hello Peter, good to see you. And Candy's here and Kate and Gail. So if you're watching, do pop into the chat box. You don't actually have to sign up or make an account or anything, and let me know you're there. It's always nice to know when someone's here and watching. So what I want to talk about a little bit today, it'll be quite a short stream, probably only about 10-15 minutes unless I get carried away, which does happen. I really want to talk just a little bit about how I go about choosing the tube paints that I'm going to start and mix with. And I thought probably the best way to do that is, because it's not always obvious and it can change depending on the color you're after, I thought probably the best way to do that is with a couple of examples, okay? Hi Nancy. Hello Job, good to see you. Job, you've done loads, haven't you? You've done about like 100 different colors you're currently working on. So let's start with this. Actually, do let me know, by the way, if you can. Oh, stop rolling about. If you can hear me and if you can see me, okay. I'm assuming that everything is fine because it looks all right from my end. Hello, Anne. Good to see you. Hi, Shelley. Oh, I'm really glad you're finding it useful. Thank you, Anne. It's kind of just a bit of fun, really, and a bit of introduction to hue, value, and chroma and how it can be useful. So I had this one on the video that I put up earlier on today. I put it on that stop it rolling about because it's not going to stop otherwise. An egg. Kind of a useful thing to be doing because the color is a bit more orange, a bit more kind of, a bit more towards yellow, but fairly close to, thank you, brilliant. Like Caucasian skin, you could say. So if I was going to start mixing this, first of all, the first thing I do is I think about the hue. So what have I got in my paint box, which is orange? So there was a couple that I pulled out earlier on, and this is why I started the series with hue and why it's so important to know the hue. So that's transparent red oxide, and that's yellow ochre. Now these are both oranges. Is that a bit out of focus? That's better, I think. Is that better? These are both yellow oranges. This one, yellow reds or oranges. This one obviously is more towards orange. Sorry, more towards yellow. So you'll have to bear with me. I've just had a really busy day today and I'm a bit tired. It's middle of the afternoon for me. Coming towards the end of my working day today. And the transparent red oxide is more red. Other oranges that I've got this, which is permanent orange, incredibly high chroma. So, as I say, it's not always that obvious which would be the best one to choose. So let's say if I just take this example. First, I start by thinking about the hue, okay? So we're thinking about oranges. So I've got 3 very different oranges out here. They're different in every respect. The hues are different, the values are different, and the chromas are different. So which one is going to get me to this color the quickest? Because that's really what I'm interested in. Hi Diana, nice to see you. So let's take each of these in turn and just try them out and see what happens, okay? So, oh, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but this is a really good way to help you choose the local color. This is just a piece of paper, which obviously I've had for a long time and have used a lot, with a little hole in it. And you can put it over whatever it is you're trying to judge the color of and isolate it. And it makes it much easier to decide what the local color is without being confused by light and shadow, okay? So let's say I started with yellow ochre. The first thing to do with all of these is to get them to the right value. So the yellow ochre is actually, it's a little bit darker. If I put this over that, egg again and hold that up next to it, you can hopefully see that your yellow ochre is a little bit too dark. Not much, but a little bit. So I would want to lighten it, okay? So if I get some yellow ochre and I lighten it, the only things really that I can lighten this with that are lighter in value than yellow ochre are white or something like a cadmium yellow. Cadmium yellow obviously is going to raise the chroma too much. So immediately I'm thinking about what I want to happen to this colour. It needs to go lighter and it needs to drop in chroma. So if I put cadmium yellow in, the chroma will go too high. So let's take white. So the way I look at this, the way I kind of think about this colour mixing is that I'm taking a colour on a journey. I'm going through a number of steps. And when I teach this, I like people to leave each step on their palette so I can see them as they go. So I brought up the value with white. So now it's looking quite close, you know. Got there really, really quickly. The value is about right and the chroma is about right, but it's too yellow. It wants to go a bit further towards orange. So that would be the next step that this colour needs to take. So if I wanted to send it more towards orange, I've got some, towards a red orange, I've got some choices here, you know. Any red will do it. Obviously, if I had a cadmium red, I don't actually use cadmium reds. I decided I didn't need them a long time ago, but here's something which is even more powerful, a pyrrole red, incredibly high chroma. So I could use that, right? I could use the permanent orange because it's a red orange. I could use transparent red oxide because that's a red orange. So these are all more red than this. So any of them will do. But if I choose these two, the chroma is going to go up because the chroma is already really high on those two, right? Which I want to avoid. So I'm thinking all the time whilst I'm mixing, I'm thinking in terms of hue, value, and chroma. So let's say this would probably be the best choice, right? But if I mix that in, the transparent red oxide, it's going to drop the value. And I've just spent some time making sure that the value is right. So, okay, so let's say what I want to do with this is I need to bring it up to the same value as this, as that mix, as this egg. So what can I do that with? There's a few things I could do it with. Again, my choices are mostly anything lighter than this will do it, but it's mostly going to be something like a yellow or a white. I don't want to use a yellow because it's going to raise the chroma. So let's say I use a white. I'm going to need quite a bit of white. Because this is obviously a very low value. And the further you take a color in value with white, from where it starts off, the more the chroma will drop. Now, transparent red oxide is a very high chroma color for its value. It's a low value, and it will keep its chroma as you go up the value range. So I'm mixing this to about the same value as my yellow ochre. You can check it the same way. It's actually really close already, but it wants to be a little bit more yellow. So just by mixing between these, if I get a little bit of the transparent red oxide and I mix it with a bit of the yellow, let's see what we get. So what I'm trying to do is get the hue right now. I've got one that's too red and one that's too yellow. So I'm trying to get the hue right. That's actually really close. The hue is really close, but there's something wrong with it. Okay, can you guess what's wrong with this color? What would I need to change? What would the next step be? Once you get really close, I think maybe it needs to go a bit more yellow. Once you get really close, it can be very difficult to decide what it is that's wrong. But for sake of argument, let's say the value is right. I'm pretty sure the value is good. I'm pretty sure the hue is all right now. Hello, Alison. Good to see you. Hi, Christine. You're very welcome, Alison. So what do you think? What would I need to do with this color? to move it closer to the colour of the egg. If you have an idea, you can pop it in the chat. I'm going to wait just a second. One of the frustrating things about streaming live is that although the chat is immediate, there's actually a lag of usually about 5 to 10 seconds on the video from me actually saying something and you hearing it. So I'm pretty sure I know what I need to do. Chroma lower. Job, yeah, you've done this before. Very good. So what am I going to lower the chroma with? Now I've got some choices here as well. You know, I could choose lower chroma. Good one, Ginger. You're right, yeah. I could use any number of things to lower chroma, but I need a low chroma color to do it. And the best thing to use, desaturate. Yeah, pretty much the same thing, Candy. Lowering chroma. Yeah, everybody's got it. So the best way to lower chroma of a color, as I was talking about, I think on day one when we were talking about hue, is with a lower chroma version of something which is quite close in hue. So what have I got in terms of an orange that's going to be low chroma? Well, there's a couple of other oranges that I've got hanging around here. So although they might not be, it might not be obvious that they are orange. This is burnt umber, and this is raw umber. Okay, I actually hardly ever use burnt umber these days, but let's put a little bit of burnt umber out. So what's the difference between these two? The main difference between them is hue. Okay, but they're both oranges. They're just very dark oranges. So rather than calling them a brown, I would rather call them an orange, because then it makes it easier for me to think about how it's going to work in a mix. Now that's interesting. Like, is it Lida or Lida? I'm not sure. I hope I pronounce your name right. I'm going to guess Lida. She says needs a little more white. The problem with adding white is that it will raise the value. So it will start going away from this color, and I think I've got the value right. So let's say if I chose burnt umber, but again, if I put that straight into this color, what will happen is I'll change the value. And once you've got the value right, you want to keep it there. So let's bring that up to the same value with white. Again, I'm choosing white because it's going to drop the chroma. So what we're ending up with here is a series of, I'm going to do the same with raw umber so we can see how that looks. A series of oranges, or yellow reds, as they're called really in Munsell. All with slightly different properties, you know. So I'm trying to get this, obviously the raw umber, this is a good thing about doing this kind of stuff, even just as practice like this, is that you learn about the properties of your paint. So I need to use quite a lot more raw umber to bring that up. The burnt umber is more red. Yes, indeed. And the raw umber is more yellow. Okay. So I would be inclined in this instance to go either with the raw umber or the burnt umber, probably more. It's really hard to choose. It may actually be best to go somewhere in between the two, but let's say I try it with the raw umber first. I'll get a little bit of that and I'll mix in some of the raw umber. And that's going to drop the chroma a little bit. We're getting pretty close now. I think I might have dropped it too much. But let's see how that looks. That was with the burnt umber. I did drop it a little bit too much. So let's take some of that out and put some of this back in again. So this is one of the things, I'm always saying this, but it's one of the things that I love about Munsell is the amount of fine control you have over the color. So I dropped the chroma too far, I just can bring it back up again. Looking pretty close. It's still, I've dropped it a little bit too far, so I'm going to bring a little bit more chroma back in. And I'd encourage you to do this kind of thing, just matching colors this way, just for practice. That's really close now. But I think it is a little bit too, oh, it's so hard to say, so hard to tell. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of this because I've run out now. because I think the chroma is still slightly low, so I'm going to bring a little bit more in. Really, really, really close. Needs to go a little bit more red, so I'll bring some more of the transparent red oxide in, because that's my red component, which I've also run out of. So I'm going to bring each time I do it, if I need to mix some more, this is why I'm always saying to people to mix plenty. If I need to mix some more, every time I do it, I bring it back to the same value. So the one thing that all of these colors that I'm mixing here have in common is that they're all the same value, pretty much. Obviously, I'm doing this fairly quickly. Needs to be a little bit more red, so I'm bringing some more of that in. I think I had too much yellow ochre that time around. It's really close. It is really close now. I'm not sure I could get it any closer than that, really. So it turned out that the right one to use probably was the burnt umber. But for sake of argument, let's just say I'm going to mix up a little bit more of this higher chroma version. So this is just the yellow ochre and the transparent red oxide until it's the right hue. Let's say if I tried that with the raw umber and see what happens. It should send it a little bit more yellow, you would think, but it's also raw umber is lower chroma as well, so it will drop the chroma a bit faster. Gone a bit too far. It's amazing how quickly that drops the chroma. But hopefully you can see, like, in some detail, how close you can get. That's really good too, but I've dropped the chroma too far. Let's make a little bit more of this. And bring the chroma back up. That's really close as well, but I think it's a little bit too yellow. So, but it's a hair's whisker out. It really is very, very small amount. Hugh, good to see you. Hello. Hello, Olga. Nice to see you. Olga says, would you use an opposite color to lower chroma? Now, that's called complement mixing, and it's something I never do, because what happens when you complement mix, it would lower the chroma. Like, because I've got an orange, so an opposite color to an orange would be a blue. And it would lower the chroma, absolutely, it would do that. It would also change the hue. But for sake of argument, let's try it. I'll say, if I get a bit of a blue out, just to show you, you know, what happens. Now I'm going to give it the best chance I can, so I'm going to bring it up to the same value, okay? This is already feeling very alien to me, because I like to keep, when I'm trying to approach a color, I don't move a long way away from it like this, like by adding a blue, you know. I'll bring it to the same value so it has the best chance of doing a good job though. And I'll take this and I'll bring in some of the blue. Gonna have to mix up a little bit more of that again. I've run out of my transparent red oxide again. Stick out a bit more white. It's also, by the way, I mean, it's a really good way to teach yourself about hue, value, and chroma. This mixing in a very careful and controlled way like this, because you also, it's very useful because you're not actually painting, so you're not worrying about anything else but mixing. It does mean obviously you chuck away a little bit of paint, but not too much. I'll get a little bit more of this yellow ochre mix ready as well. Otherwise there won't be enough here to see what we're doing. Trying to do this without wasting too much paint at the same time, so I'll keep having to remix. So let's get some more of our original mix, which was these two. Yellow, ochre and white, and transparent red oxide and white, until we're at the right hue, the right value, but too high chroma. Okay, I'm going to clean that off because it's a bit too thin. So I'll take some of this here, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of the blue, and let's see what happens. It is definitely reducing the chroma. But it's also changing the hue. So it kind of works. So it takes something closer. What it takes closer is the chroma. I've overdone it massively, but hopefully you can see it's gone slightly greenish. I'll bring a little bit of this back in. So it has dropped the chroma, absolutely it has, but it's also sent the hue slightly greenish, and we just spent ages trying to make sure, well, not ages, a little while, trying to make sure that we had the right hue. So now I need to bring it away from green and back towards orange. I'd have to bring some more transparent red oxide in again. It's gone way past yellow and into green, which makes sense when you think about it, because there's a strong component of yellow in it. Needs even more than that. And when you mix yellow and blue, you get green. So I'm struggling here to get back close enough. It's still looking very green. So I'm trying to bring it back with some more orange. So the problem with complement mixing in general is that you're introducing some unpredictability into the mix. And I think that's why, to be honest, it's part of the reason that so many people struggle with color mixing, because they think complement mixing is the way to reduce chroma, and it will do it, but I think there's a much more intuitive and easier way to do it, which was with one of these two. So I'm gradually bringing more orange back in because it's gone so green. I should eventually manage to get back to the same color. It's just going to take me a little while to get there. Now I've gone to orange and I still haven't got enough chroma. I'll bring some, I don't know what to do now. I'll bring some yellow back in. I think it's going to go more green again though. It's close. It is close, but it's still, I'm struggling to get quite there. And that was with quite a bit of fiddling about. So actually you can do it, but as Leda says, opposite colors change the color. Yeah, I think what you mean there is that they change the hue, which they absolutely do. This way of doing it, by using either the raw umber, in which case I needed to add a little bit more orange, or using the burnt umber, they were much more reliable. So I could have started with any of these colors. I could have started with the yellow ochre. The transparent red oxide actually would have got me closer, or I could have started with raw umber, because I was still going to need those three, a combination of those three mixed with white to get to the right color, because these two got me to the right hue, but the chroma was too high. So I had to drop the chroma. So now that we know that, there might actually be a quicker way of getting there. Okay, so let's say I started with the yellow ochre. Quite often with lower chroma colors, and an egg is not a very high chroma, it's quite a low chroma color. With lower chroma colors, there can often be a few different ways that you can get to a color. So here's my yellow ochre. So let's try, I wonder what would happen if I missed out the transparent red oxide altogether and just took a raw umber and white mix. It's got to be the same value, remember. Always mix value to value. It's just a way of simplifying the mixing so you know what you're dealing with. So this is raw umber and white. Get them to about the same value. And let's try mixing those together. So I'm going to take a very small amount of the yellow ochre because it's much more powerful because it's higher chroma. It's going to be more powerful in the mix than the raw umber is. But the raw umber should drop the chroma and send it more towards orange. Okay, and let's see what we get. Drop the chroma too much. And if I bring the chroma back up with the yellow ochre, we go too yellow. So actually we did need all three of them. We needed the transparent red oxide to bring the orange in as well. Okay. How about raw and burnt umber? I think that would probably work pretty well, Ginny. Yeah. A little bit of those two together would probably work pretty well. I think it would. And you're so close by that time. It's actually, when it gets to the point, I always look at it this way, right? When it gets to the point where you literally can't tell the difference, you're probably close enough that it's not going to make a huge amount of difference in your painting by that time. Peter says, I have to go get an egg or two right after breakfast. I think I have a variety of shades from my farmer's market. Yeah, these also come from a farmer's market. And the nice thing about them is that they're not bred to look all perfectly the same with much abuse of the animals involved. They're actually laid naturally outside, and they will have a lot of different colors. Okay, so I hope that helped. Now, some of them, sometimes it's obvious where you want to start, and sometimes it's not obvious. Like, say something like this, like a lemon. You could say that's pretty obvious, right? Now, you would say, well, I'd start with cadmium yellow, maybe. That's going to be very, very orange, so you'd have to send it more green, and you would have to drop the chroma because it would be too high chroma. But that would be a pretty good place to start. An even better place to start would be something like cadmium lemon yellow, which is already really close. Something like this probably would also start with, you could also start with lemon yellow or a cad yellow. But you could also start, if you wanted to, with yellow ochre. You would probably need to, it's too orange, and you would have to send it a lot more yellow. But it's quite low chroma, a banana, and that's actually pretty close. It's just a little bit too orange. So it's always worth trying some other stuff. You know, you would just want to send that a little bit more yellow. Okay. Say I've got something like this. That has a lot of different kind of colors within it. So I would basically use, even if I was painting it, I would use the same approach. If you mask off a little bit of it like that and you blur your eyes, it's actually a bluish green, low chroma bluish green. So I would want to mix the resultant color. And for this, I would probably be going with ultramarine blue to start with, and then I would be dropping the chroma with raw umber, which would also send it more green and drop the chroma as well. So basically, you start off by thinking about the hue. Look closely at the color you want to reach and think about what the chroma is, and that will tell you what you need to do next. Like if it's really high chroma, then you can only use your high chroma paints to adjust the value. If it's low chroma, like an egg, then white is probably the best option. And then once you get it to that point, so we got it to there, our first step, then think about what needs to happen next. With this color, it needed to go more orange. That was the most obvious thing, so we added that. And then the next most obvious thing was that we needed to drop the chroma, so we tried these two. We also tried this one, but we got some kind of slightly weird results. I did my best with that, but no matter how I changed this color with the, it seems to me, with the blue in it, it's become very difficult to, strange things happen to the hue. I suspect, see, it needs to be more orange. It also, the other thing that's noticeable about using the blue is that it dropped the chroma extremely quickly, and it was quite difficult to control. Actually pretty much back there now, I would say. But I had to add a lot of paint back in to get there. So you're better off doing it in a more controlled way with a lower chroma version of the same color. Okay, so have a go. If you have one of the colors that you chose as part of this little series, then have a go at this exercise. Pick the closest one out, which hopefully you've done today's little challenge, and have a go at mixing it and see how it goes. Now tomorrow is going to be the final one. I don't know if I'm going to have a video tomorrow, but I am going to have a much longer live session, okay, which will be, I think will be the same time, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me, which is 11 a.m. Eastern time and 8 a.m. Pacific time. And I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about mixing color, and I'm also going to show you some interesting stuff about mixing color for light and shadow once you've figured out the local. Actually, you might just do an egg. That seems like a good idea to me. Okay, so thanks very much for coming along. I hope it was interesting. I really just want to introduce you to a different method, I think a more controlled way, a more careful way, and once you get used to it, I find personally more intuitive way of mixing color too. Oh, hello, Mariana. Good to see you. Actually, just signing off now. But thanks very much for coming, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow at about 4. I'll send out an email with a link to the live session earlier on in the day. Okay? Thanks very much. I'll see you later.